This week, we are going to be debating Davante Adams. And Joey, I'm tossing it to you first. I went first last week. Give me the pro case for Davante Adams.
I mean, what's not to like about Davante Adams, the best wide receiver in the NFL last season in 2020, from a real life and a fantasy football perspective? I mean, he was just so much better than everybody else in terms of fantasy points last year, put up multiple 40-plus point games, so we know his ceiling is incredible. And I feel like the only negative surrounding Adams right now is obviously the Rodgers situation, which we touched on last podcast if you're interested in listening to that. But I personally believe that Rodgers will be with Green Bay in 2021, so I'm not docking Adams too much for that situation right now. And I know that a popular argument every single season would just play with players who score a lot of touchdowns is touchdown regression. And yeah, there might be some touchdown regression. He might not score 18 touchdowns again, but Adams has always been a touchdown scorer in his career so far. He scored 10 plus touchdowns in 4 out of 5 seasons as a starter, which is fantastic for fantasy football. So Adams, with him being a target monster, with him having an elite connection with Rodgers, probably the best connection in the NFL, he has elite red zone usage. He had the most targets in the red zone out of any player in the NFL last season. We know that they look to him more than any other player on the Packers in the red zone. And honestly, there's no major competition for targets. Like Alan Lazard, he's fine. MVS is whatever. They drafted Amari Rodgers, who is just, kind of like a short slot receiver type gadget player. They have Robert Tonyan, who's whatever. He's not really a difference maker. I don't see many guys on the Packers that are going to compete with Davante Adams for targets. So if you're getting him right now on Underdog as the wide receiver 4, Tyreek Hill, Diggs, and A.J. Brown are going above him, and he's going above guys like D-Hop, Calvin Ridley, DK Metcalf right now, I think that you should be buying Davante Adams, especially since this is a guy that was going as the wide receiver 1 not too long ago. Before this whole Rodgers debacle came out and whatever, before that happened, he was the wide receiver 1. So I'm taking the value on Adams right now as the wide receiver 4 going in the second round, and I just don't see any negatives surrounding Davante Adams in 2021.
I mean, I think the negative is that the risk-reward proposition just simply doesn't make sense. I agree with you that Aaron Rodgers is most likely going to be the Packers' starting quarterback this season. But, I mean, how confident are we in that take? I mean, are we 60% sure?
99%.
Yeah, you're a lot more confident than I am. I mean, I think it's more like 40, 60%, and that's being generous. It could be 50-50. And if there's a 50-50 shot that Jordan Love is throwing this man the ball this season, then, he's 100% at best a wide receiver 2. He's outside of the wide receiver 1 conversation at that point. And, you talked about maybe he's going to get some touchdown regression. No. He is going to get some touchdown regression. 30% of Davante Adams' points came from touchdowns in a season that Aaron Rodgers threw the most touchdowns of his entire career. And to put that in perspective, when you look at some of the other top 5 wide receivers, elite players, they're not getting that much of their production from touchdowns, which we know is the most random and hard to predict and carry over year to year stat for wide receivers. Calvin Ridley at 19.1%, Diggs only 14% of his production came from touchdowns, DeAndre Hopkins only 12.5%. I just don't see it. I don't see Aaron Rodgers throwing for 48 touchdowns again. And simply the risk of, having Jordan Love as a starting quarterback, I think is enough to drop him to the bottom of this tier. It would take injuries to, Mahomes, Josh Allen, Ryan Tannehill, Kyler Murray, Matt Ryan, Russell Wilson to really impact these other players in that tier. And the injury risk for all of those guys and Rodgers is about the same, but the risk of any of those quarterbacks just leaving the situation and the chemistry that drives that player like Rodgers does with Adams, vanishing into thin air is essentially none for every player except for Davante Adams in that tier. And for that reason, to me, the risk and the reward just doesn't make sense, because what's the reward? wide receiver 1 overall, there's like 6 or 7 guys who have that in their range. So I just don't see what the point of making that gamble is. It seems like a bad bet.
I mean, it's definitely not a bad bet because you're still getting the best wide receiver in the NFL who has 40-plus point games in his range of outcomes.
He's not going to be the best wide receiver in the NFL if Jordan Love's his quarterback. I hate to break it to you.
But you're thinking it's a 40-50% chance that he's the quarterback. I'm projecting 90% chance. There's no shot that Rodgers isn't going to play for Green Bay. Like, he's going to play for Green Bay for 17 games. If that happens, Davante Adams is a
What
smash.
percentage chance do you think that Aaron Rodgers replicates his MVP production and, comes out and has another career year this late in his career?
I mean, obviously the chances of him replicating what he did last season is lower, right? But the Green Bay Packers offense has steadily improved ever since Matt LaFleur joined a couple years ago. We obviously know that Rodgers and Davante Adams, like I said, have the best connection out of any quarterback wide receiver duo in the NFL. Davante Adams still one of the most talented wide receivers in the NFL. And he put up more 40-plus point games last season than anybody, and that's what we want in best ball. We want those spike weeks, and Davante Adams is a guy that can give you those spike weeks, and then you also throw in that they're playing an extra game. Like, Davante Adams only played in 14 games last season and outscored every wide receiver that played in more games than him by 30-plus points in PPR leagues. I don't know. I mean, I could see the downside with Adams, especially if Jordan Love is his quarterback, but I think the downside is mitigated by the Packers really not having anybody else behind Davante Adams. He's still going to be a target monster no matter who his quarterback is, and he has the talent to be a productive fantasy wide receiver no matter who's throwing the football to him. So I don't really care too much about the Jordan Love argument. I think that's just you getting in your own head, and I'm not taking DeAndre Hopkins and Calvin Ridley and, DK Metcalf above Davante Adams, even A.J. Brown. Thanks for watching, everybody. If you're interested in hearing the full conversation, you could go down below in the description where we have links to the DFS Dose podcast on Apple, Spotify, SoundCloud, and then we're also on some other podcast sites. So make sure you go ahead and check out the full episode that this conversation was a part of. Subscribe to the channel if you want to help us out. We're at like 167 subscribers or something like that. So help us reach 200. And then you can also leave a like on the video. Those are just some ways to help us out, help us grow. So let us know down below what type of content you want to see out of us. And if you guys want to continue hearing these clips from the conversations on the podcast. So let us know down below in the comments. But thanks again, everybody, for watching. We appreciate you. Have a good day. Thank you.